This week, the final chapter played out in a case that gripped the nation, the disappearance of Azaria Chamberlain at Uluru more than 30 years ago. A Northern Territory coroner has found a dingo was responsible for the baby's death. Alison Middleton spoke with Lindy Chamberlain Creighton about the toll the battle for justice has taken.
Lindy Chamberlain Creighton, welcome to 7:30 NT.
Thank you.
It's been a long battle for you to finally get to this point. Has that come at a huge financial cost to you and your family?
Yes, it has actually, despite the fact that we've had so many people send in money to help people that we don't know, we'll never know who they all are. Some came with names, some came anonymously, but we wouldn't have been able to fight without that. And then our church got bank loans and guaranteed money for it. And there were all sorts of appeals taken up, and we just couldn't afford without that. So I wouldn't be sitting here without public support because we didn't have the finances. And I mean, up to the end of the Royal Commission, that was $5.5 million, and there's been 2 inquests and compensation submissions and all sorts of things like that. And people tend to think, oh, well, she got compensation, that paid for it. Well, I can tell you that despite the fact that I got compensation and the Northern Territory supposedly paid all our legal expenses, within that, they don't consider that interest on your loan is anything to do with it, and that was $800,000. So that was left outstanding, and compensation didn't cover that. Media interviews I've done since haven't covered that, and in fact, in the end, the church said, "Lindy, you've done enough. We've written it off our books. We're not going there any longer."
Does the decision this week give you confidence that justice can now be served in the Northern Territory?
I hope that the Northern Territory justice system and police and parliamentarians have learned something out of this, because it's the Northern Territory public that get to pay for it. And the last Northern Territory figures I heard at the end of the Royal Commission was $25 million. And that is a lot of territory, roadworks, schools, hospitals, upkeep that could have been done instead of trying to cover up a few people's pride, basically.
Do you see that what happened to you was more than a miscarriage of justice, that someone had it in for you?
I think there were a number of people who definitely had personal agendas they wanted to fulfil, and let's leave that at that, because I can't say outright what I know about some of these things, because until they're dead, you can't tell the truth in Australia. It's still considered libel. If your next door neighbour didn't know that about you, then you can sue.
The failure in forensics was a notable aspect of your case. How difficult was it to mount a case against the forensic evidence, and do you think things have changed for the better in Australia now?
Well, it was impossible actually, because we were not given access to any of the physical evidence by our forensic men, other than photographs and notes. We weren't physically able to see any items until a week before the High Court. We were allowed to look at some things in the court, and we weren't given any access for testing until after the High Court, which at that stage was as far as we could go.
And have things changed for the better now?
Well, they have, because my senior counsel at the trial was so upset at the way things were done and handled that he went away and said, "Will I toss in the law? This is not what I trained for. will I do something about it? And he took 3 months off and thought about that and went, no, something's got to be done. And he opened the first independent forensic laboratory in Australia, and now that has grown from a Victorian one to an Australian one, and there are places now for the defence to go to have it checked.
Given that you've got the amended death certificate and you've been exonerated, is there any other action that you'd like to see from the Northern Territory government?
I would like the Northern Territory, if they are really sorry for what they've done, to set up in this state, like they have done in Western Australia, Justice Northern Territory, where they can raise funds for the people that are in your state to get a fair go and to be able to send their forensics away to national laboratories where you can get people to look over the evidence and make sure that it's done it right. Because in my case, the Northern Territory government knew there was mistakes in the forensic and were refusing to let anyone look at them.
Lindy Chamberlain Creighton, thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank you for having me.